And I'm talking for these two segments with Pastor Tom Hughes, 412 Church in San Jacinto, California, endtimestv.org. And gentlemen, I gave a tease that this giveaway of the internet to dictators and thugs really troubles me. Tom, your take on this?
Let me take us back for just a few seconds to George Orwell. He writes about Big Brother, a book many people are familiar with. And in that, the authority, the whole Big Brother thing, wants to make sure that nobody can band together and rebel. And also, in that time, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act, right? Fast forward from the days of George Orwell to October 1, 2016, and the United States not being the one who has control over the Internet, the UN does. I look at this as a very clear sign of the direction this is going to go. The purpose of international regulation, which is what this comes down to, is international surveillance and control. Exactly what George Orwell had said differently in 1984. It's still the same. We've got to control the people. We can't have them rally together and have some revolutionary act. We can't have people rebelling against the system, because right now there are all different voices that are on the Internet, and some of them are fantastic, but they also happen to be against this global direction that things are going. I see this thing as necessary in order to bring about a new world order. I don't like it at all. I'm all over the Internet. I want to speak the truth, but it's coming, and it's ugly.
You know, Tom, when this happened, I just thought, we were warned that our biggest enemies, the nemesis of what would bring us down, would be inside and not coming from outside, and that's exactly what happened in this case, too.
Well, Barack Obama is the one who gave it away. I'm not quite sure why he had the authority to do that, unless the President of the United States and the U.S. kind of owned the Internet.
Yeah, where was Congress? Well, why did no one try to stop him is what gets me.
Well, I think a few did, like Ted Cruz, and a few others tried to push back, but they got nowhere, because I don't think that Ted Cruz had a whole lot of people pushing with him, which has kind of been the story of Congress for the last 8 years.
You would think that people would have stood up on both sides of the aisle, though, and would have said, no, this is a bad deal. But pretty amazing, and I think when that many mouths are silent all at once, you have to think God is orchestrating, God's allowing this to take place, and to see the Internet and the freedoms of the Internet, and people say, well, it looks free to me, it looks just like it did before this all happened. Just give it a while, folks, because this thing could be like a snowball as fast as it could happen. And I've been concerned about free speech. We've talked about it on air many times. I talk about it in my seminar series when I go out and speak. I'm concerned about free speech. Tom is concerned. You're concerned, Jan. We all are about this, because the gospel and the freedom to preach and to present the gospel is what's at stake here in the end.
Tom, let me quote you a little bit here from your book. You say, as America collectively and Americans individually reject God, the nation becomes more vulnerable to the big lie. Those who openly eject God become ripe pickings for the cult of personality that will surround the Antichrist. And I think the point you're making throughout the book is that the one who's going to lead this New World Order, when it blossoms completely, will be the Antichrist. And again, it's going to happen partly because America, like Europe, ditched God, slowly but surely, happening in front of our eyes.
This is somewhat bothersome for me to say this, but I'm going to say it anyways and admit it. I'm a pastor of a church. Churches in America have become personality-driven. It's been that way, and it's for a long time, but it's getting much worse. Like the days of the Roman Empire, people want bread and circuses, entertain them. So here's this guy that's going to come along. We know from the book of Daniel and also from Revelation, the Antichrist is extremely charismatic. He knows how to speak through the masses. He'll be better than Hitler and Joseph Goebbels ever were. And it'll be remarkable, and the people will be swayed by him and easily submitting to this personality, because of the cult of personality. Who that person is, I don't know. But we watch all of this, Jan and Eric, and we also know from the book of Revelation there's 10 kings. I could call them 10 elite rulers that are going to give their authority to the beast, the Antichrist. And we see this. We see the elite rulers rising and controlling things. And then they're going to give it over to one person who has the ability to sway the masses.
And you talk about, as does Gary Kahn, again, we've talked to him about on this topic a number of times. You cite Pope Francis just like he does. Gary calls him the vicar of the New World Order. Talk to us about your perception of the role of Pope Francis or another pope.
Well, right now, I would say that when I look at Pope Francis, he's become the spokesperson. He is saying things that I believe the masses of people want to hear, especially if you start looking at the top and the elite. He's talking about social agreements or bringing about social justice throughout the world and economic justice throughout the world, which really means bringing the economy of the average American down so the world's more balanced in that sense. But he's become the spokesperson, and so much of the world is loving this, including Americans. And the strange thing about it, Eric and Jan, is that not all Catholics agree with this Pope.
Yeah.
Some Catholics do, some don't. And Protestants, astoundingly, some don't, but many do. And you look at this, and I'm not saying the Pope is the false prophet, but what he is saying, what so many people want to hear. He's just jumped and brought out the whole social thing and now driving the environmental cause also. Telling us you're a sinner if you don't recycle or something bizarre like that he recently said. I look at that, I think of Romans chapter 1, in the end they'll worship the creation rather than the Creator. I hear what this Pope says, and I think, wow, what he's saying is bringing the masses into this religious system that's going to eventually be developed that will be used by the Antichrist. I'm not saying he's it, but boy, he sure is a great spokesman for what is coming.
If he's not it, Tom, then he's giving lessons, that's for sure. And we have talked about that here on air. Jan and I have hypothesized about could he be the one, and we don't know, but I can tell you conservative Catholics, no matter what you think of Catholicism, with I think some problems there, but no matter what you think of it, he's upsetting many of them, as you just pointed out, and I think that's an interesting thing. The thing that really gets me is how are evangelicals buying what he's selling and not realizing what's happening? It's only because I believe they've been malnourished concerning prophecy and current events and what's happening in our day that they can even get into that thinking.
Eric, when Protestants are thinking this and agreeing with this Pope, I think they just want to hear the warm and fuzzy stuff. I don't think they want to know the truth. They deliberately they're ignorant of the fact that Jesus is coming again and how these things are going to unfold. And people, they want to hear good news. People don't like to hear bad news, and prophecy does not always deliver wonderful news. But Jan, there's a saying you have, and I quote it all the time.
Sure.
I rip it off from you. I hope that's okay.
That's good.
But you say, and I do give you credit, things are not falling apart, but they're falling into place. And when you understand Bible prophecy, man, it makes so much sense.
Yep, I know. You're listening to Understanding the Times Radio. I'm Jan Markell. I have on the line from California, Pastor Tom Hughes, 412 Church, San Jacinto, California, and they're a part of the Calvary Chapel churches. Eric Barger's in studio with me, and I'd like to play a real short sound by Dr. Ed Hindson, prophecy teacher I so respect. He was one of my conference speakers in 2014, and he's talking about the global worldview today, and I think it complements our conversation here.
Globalism is a word that's on everybody's lips these days. Years ago, you almost never heard the term, but today it's a household word, that we're a global community, a world village, that we all need to interconnect with one another. In fact, it's the reality of our times. Back in 1973, I was flying on a Delta jet. I pulled the Delta Sky magazine out of the rack, and I was reading an article about the coming cashless society of the future. Way back then, it said the day will come that cash will almost be meaningless to people. Everybody will use a credit card. Some kind of cashless, wireless transactions will be taking place. Money will be moved from one account to another automatically. This is going to be the wave of the future. Now, they made it sound like it was all going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years, but in the next 30 or 40 years, it became a reality. We are living in a day and age unlike anything the world has ever seen before. And all of that change causes a lot of concern and a lot of questions, because the Bible clearly predicts the fact that in the end times, a sinister figure, the Antichrist, will control a global economy. Now, in commenting on this in my book, Antichrist Rising, I make this statement on page 105, and I want to read it to you right out of the book. There's certainly nothing morally wrong with computers or televisions or satellites or cashless financial transactions, but many Christians are concerned where all of this might lead. It appears appears that we are slowly becoming the victims of our own technological advancements. We're being swept down the corridor of time to an ominous date with destiny, steadily moving toward the inevitable globalization of our planet as national identities and interests continue to be submerged by the global worldview. Today, the attitude of the world is we're only concerned about what's good for the rest of the world. We really don't care about you.
Yeah, and I'm basing the conversation today off of a new book, America in the New World Order by Pastor Tom Hughes. Best to get it, Amazon.com. Don't call here for it. We do not have it, but you can get it online, Amazon.com. You can learn much more about Pastor Tom at endtimestv.org, endtimestv.org. Tom, did you want to make any comment about that clip and anything said there?
I love Ed Heinzen. He's filled in for me many times. He hits the nail on the head. Think of it this way. We know the tracking system is going to be here. No man can buy or sell. The whole way of electronic transaction is coming about. Let's think of it this way. Just when it comes down to your cell phone and even paying by cell phone. Think of this. When men first went to the moon in 1969, the onboard computer that NASA sent was an engineering marvel, you could say, but a current cell phone is 43,000 times faster than that. The smartphone has 2 million times more memory. And you look at this, that computer also weighs 70 pounds. This fits into your pocket. So we start looking at the tracking system and the digital transactions for money. I mean, I love paying everything digital. I want to buy gas. I want to pay digitally. I don't like carrying cash around. It's convenient, and as the next generation is coming around, I don't even think they're going to know what cash is. And I look at this, the technology is here to implement the mark of the beast.
Yes.
The data systems are here. You know, the things that we are talking about are really off the charts, but we live in a generation right now that we're seeing all of this. It's in real time. And what's it going to take to implement it? The rapture? I don't know.